Hi, my name is Celestina Hernandez, and I'm going to be doing the STEM connection for South and Central America. So the Native Americans turned simple natural materials into some of the most effective survival gear of all time. They created weapons like the bow and arrow to help them both hunt and eat. They created these weapons from natural resources that they often found all around them. Early arrows were created from stones that were cut and formed into a sharp point. European traders later supplied the tribes with metal tips that were created by blacksmiths from Europe that had greater durability than the stones. They also used feathers at the end of their bows from different hawks and chickens. To create the bows, they would use wood that they would strip from trees, and the bowstring was made from buffalo tendon strands, which were braided to help form a tough cord to be able to support the arrow and create the action that is performed on the arrow to make it work. So as you can see, the Native Americans used all natural resources that surrounded them to support their living and survival needs.
Hi, my name is Celeste Guerrero, and I'll be talking about South and Central America pre-European influence. I'll be focusing on the social context part of it. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was how these tribes would carve out step-like terraces in mountains. So this would allow them to flatten out their soil and to keep it from eroding. And this allows them to plant, to grow things, to grow their food. And this is amazing for them because they didn't have markets. They weren't able to go somewhere and just grab food. They could grow everything, and this is big for them socially because it gives them food to be able to feed their people with. So these people were big. They didn't travel alone. They were in tribes. These people had families. They were big tribes, so they needed to feed all these people. So being able to plant and keep their soil level is really big for them. And then another thing they would do is they would dry out their potatoes. So they would step on their potatoes on straw and they would dry them out. And this is an amazing thing because that's a really big thing for them. And then a third thing that they did was they would burn their grass around them. And that's big socially because that attracts game and animals in their area, and that allows them to hunt. And these animals were huge, and they had a bunch of fur on them, and that's big for these people because it gave them meat to eat to provide for their tribes. It gave them fur to use for clothes, for blankets, kept them warm in the winter. So having that was huge for them socially. And then the last thing, the most important thing, is a bow and arrow. So they started creating bow and arrows because they needed to hunt more animals, get enough meat and fur for their tribes, for their families. And that was all their social aspects of why they did what they did. Thank you.
For our group project, we discovered many forms of showcase STEM by the Central and South American pre-European cultures. You begin to think, where does this information all come from? Lucky for us, this civilization left an immense amount of data that we can collect through ancient artifacts, such as calendars carved out of stone that represent how they use the sky for all aspects of their lives. With these calendars, they were able to create days and seasons, and also the first mathematical tool known to humans called the Quipi. Having math and the stars by their side to guide them, they were able to create vast farming systems, and this is shown through hieroglyphics, and architectures for their civilizations. If it wasn't for these leftover artifacts, we would never have been able to understand these advanced civilizations and what they had become. And we can also take from these civilizations and reuse it for our own mathematics, architecture, and astronomy through all this evidence.
Hello, my name is Analee Hemann, and I'm going to be discussing the connection to historic origins of South and Central America pre-European influence. So South and Central America before the Europeans arrived was very lush and full of vegetation and abundant with animal life. South and Central America contained around 1 million people before the Europeans emigrated over, and the people of this time period were hunter and gatherers who lived a mostly nomadic lifestyle that revolved around their food sources. So oftentimes they would travel together, following their food sources, such as buffalo and bison. They were very traditional and relied on traditions and astrology for their religious rituals. A notable one of this is the Mayan calendar. They used the stars to map how their years would go. Another thing that's important to know about the South and Central American people before the Europeans arrived was their innovation of corn. This was the first sign of a man-made genetic engineering, and they came about this by crossbreeding plants over time, evolving until what we see now as modern-day corn. There was a lot of really great ancient civilizations during this time, such as the Aztecs and the Mayans, and they really went in with their architecture and had all these intricate designs for their temples, such as Chichen Itza and Teotihuacan.
My name is Brooke Garza, and I have connections to current events for Central and South America. So to start, thousands of years ago, the Mayans used astronomy to track the sun and the moon, and it eventually led to the creation of the first accurate 365-day calendar, which we still use today in our everyday lives. They also had a tool that they created called Quipu, and this served as their calculators to help them with very complex math. This now evolved into our calculators, and so far as our advanced graphing calculators. The Quipu also allowed them to create engineering feats to build large stone buildings without having to use any cement. And it's evolved into what our engineering feats are now and how complex our buildings are. The early Americans used teosinte grass, and they crossbred them over centuries using agriculture engineering, and now it is corn. And the teosinte grass was the size of a human thumb, and it was almost inedible, and now corn floods vast fields across 2 hemispheres and is used for an abundance of consumption all over the world. So I went from this to this.